And he, the Antichrist, shall speak great words against the Most High. And he shall wear out the saints of the Most High and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand unto a time and times and the dividing of time. Now you notice it says 3.5 years. Where do we get that 3.5 years? Time is singular. Times is a dual. It's not plural. How many of you know what a dual is? We don't really use a dual in English. We only have one word that uses a dual in English. Anyone know what that word is? Both. Both. If you come to me and you say, hey, Pastor, do you want Lay's potato chips, Frito corn chips, or Doritos? And I look at you and I say, I want both of them. You're going to go, well, which two? Why would you say that? Because I said both. Both means more than one, but it doesn't mean more than two. It's a dual. That's probably the only word that I know of, I could think of, that English uses as a dual. But every language, most languages have duals, and Hebrew does. And so it uses a time, singular, and times, and it's used as a dual. So that's two. 2 and 1 is 3. And the dividing of time, which is half. So 3.5 years. Now, contrary to what most people think, speaking great words against the Most High doesn't just mean he's blaspheming. It means that he's proclaiming to be God, or he's proclaiming to be just as great as God. So this refers to the abomination of desolation. Notice what Paul said in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. He, talking about the Antichrist, will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped. Yeah. So that he sets himself up in God's temple, referring to the Holy of Holies, proclaiming himself to be God. People, that is the abomination of desolation. Halfway through the tribulation, 3.5 years into it, the Antichrist enters the Holy of Holies, and he claims or he proclaims to be God. Yeah. And then, of course, because he doesn't stay there, he sets up a sacrilegious object in the Holy of Holies, but he's desecrated it. That's the abomination of desolation. But not only is he going to proclaim himself to be God, but according to Daniel 7:25, he's also going to change the times and the laws. Look at the last part of verse 25. This is Daniel chapter 7. And he, the Antichrist, shall speak great words against the Most High, and he shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Wear out means he's going after them to kill them. And think to change times and laws. Now, the phrase times and laws is a figure of speech. You see, rabbis refer to the Sabbath and the 3 feasts, the spring feast, the summer feast, and the fall feast. We know them as the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles. They refer to those, the Sabbath and those 3 feasts as times, because God set specific times for men to observe those holy days. So the Sabbath and the 3 Jewish feasts were referred to as times. Look at Deuteronomy 16:16. I'll show you what I'm talking about. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose. In the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is actually 3 feasts in one. Feast of Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Feast of First Fruits. And in the Feast of Weeks, which we know as the Feast of Pentecost. And in the Feast of Tabernacles, which is 3 feasts in one. The Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of the Great Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. But they'll just refer to them as these 3 feasts. And they shall not appear before the Lord empty. Now, the law refers to the Levitical law. In other words, the laws of God that are outlined in the book of Leviticus. You see, in the book of Leviticus, you'll find the different types of sacrifices and offerings that were to be offered to God and how to perform them. You had to do it the way God said. It also detailed what's considered to be clean and unclean, and it also outlined the specific duties of the priest. So he's going to change the Jewish times and the Levitical law. Now, let me explain what that means. Again, in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, we're told that this Antichrist is going to make a 7-year peace treaty with Israel, and he's going to allow them to rebuild the temple. But after 3.5 years, he's going to break the treaty. And when he breaks the treaty, he's going to stop the Jews from offering their sacrifices to God. And he'll set up a sacrilegious object in the temple and tell them to worship it. People, that's changing the Levitical laws. And in his desire to annihilate all Jewish institutions, he'll even change the Sabbath and the Jewish feast. That's what verse 25 means when it says, excuse me, he'll change the times and the laws. He'll stop the sacrifices and oblations, and he'll set up a religious system that's totally contrary to the Levitical law, and he'll change the Sabbath and the 3 Jewish feasts to something else. What do you think he's going to change them to? Would you like to know my opinion? He's going to change the Sabbath to Friday and the feast to Ramadan. I'll stop right there. Yeah. You'll see why I say that when I speak next time. Now, look back at Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. The ruler, Antichrist, will make a treaty with the people of Israel for a period of 7 years. But after half this time, he will put an end to the sacrifices and offerings, and as a climax to all his terrible deeds, he will set up a sacrilegious object that causes desecration until the fate decreed for this defiler is finally poured out upon him. In other words, he'll enter into the Holy of Holies, sit on the mercy seat, and proclaim himself to be God. That's the abomination of desolation. And then when he leaves it, he's going to set up a sacrilegious object in the Holy of Holies, and he cancels all of the things that the Jews do. People that desecrates the holy place. And then he turns on the Jews. And people, that's what Revelation is all about. If you went through my series with Revelation, you know most of this in detail. Now, how many of you are visual learners? You kind of tuned me out as I went through all this. Yeah. It's like, this is just names and numbers and, oh my gosh, how does he keep all that straight? Right? Okay, if you're a visual learner, let me give you an eschatological timeline based on the 70-week prophecy. This is my own personal one. You won't find it out there. Hopefully we can put this PDF on the website. But let me show you this eschatological timeline. Here's what Daniel says. We got verse 25, verse 26, and verse number 27. But verse number 25 tells us, for from the time the decree is given to rebuild the city of Jerusalem until the Messiah comes and officially reveals himself will be 7 and 62 weeks. In other words, 69 weeks, which is 483 years. There is 360 days in a prophetical year, so that's 173,880 days. Do we know when the decree was given to rebuild Jerusalem? Yes, we do. It was March the 14th, 445 BC. So from the time that decree was given until the Messiah appears, right here, he's revealed, will be a period of 483 years or 173,880 days. That would be from this time to this time, April 6, 32 AD. That's the exact day that Jesus revealed himself. For no other reason, every Jew should have accepted Jesus as the Messiah if they believed that Daniel was the prophet. All they had to do was count the days, because Daniel told them. Yes. So the Jews missed his first visitation, his first coming. Now, verse 26 is the interval. It tells us that after the 69 weeks, but before the 70th week, certain things will happen. First of all, the Messiah who officially revealed himself on April the 6th, 32 AD will be cut off. In Hebrew, that means will be killed, will be murdered. Jesus was put to death 4 days later, on April the 10th, 32 AD. Exactly what Daniel prophesied. And then it says, the people of the prince that shall come will destroy the city and the temple. That happened in 70 AD. But he told us these things happen, these events happen after verse 25, after the 69 weeks, but before the 70th week, which is the tribulation. So we know that there's an interval. There's a space of time or a gap of time between when Jesus came the first time and when the tribulation begins. But how long is that gap of time? Well, this is the one thing we didn't learn from Daniel, but we learned from Ezekiel. Ezekiel was told by God to lay on his side so many days on his left, and to lay on his side so many days on his right. And each day that he laid on his side represented 1 year. And he said, because of the people's sin, they're going to have to, or they owe me these many years of servitude. And so what we find out is they haven't paid their years of servitude. And it was actually 7 times more because they rebelled against God. And Leviticus tells us that. So, how long is this interval, the space of time between when the Messiah first came and the tribulation begins, and which the Messiah will come at the end of it? Well, we know that they came out of the Babylonian captivity on July 23rd, 537 BC. That's when it ended. But they still owed God 2,520 years of servitude. And let me ask you this. Is God going to do these great things for Israel until they paid their debt? No. God doesn't do that. Because the plumb line is just and the level is righteousness. So now they're going to have to pay this. So from this time here, there's 2,520 years of servitude they still owe God. So when we count that off, and we can convert that to days, and we convert that to years, months, and dates, and we find out that on May the 14th, 1948, Israel became a nation. The very day that they paid off their debt to God in years of servitude. Wow. Is that a coincidence? No.